Before we begin, make sure you're somewhere quiet. Turn off the lights. Put on your headphones. Because the stories you're about to hear aren't just scary. These are the kinds of experiences people don't talk about. If you enjoy true horror stories, unsettling encounters, and disturbing events that happen to real people, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Now, let's begin. I started working night security at the hospital because I thought it would feel safer than my last job. People around. Lights on. Cameras everywhere. I was wrong. The hospital was old, built in the 1960s, expanded over decades. Corridors added onto corridors. Wings that didn't quite line up. Doors that led to places no one used anymore. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. 2 guards on paper. In reality, I was alone most nights. My job was simple: monitor cameras, check entrances, and do patrols every hour. There was a printed route taped to the desk, a checklist of floors and wings I had to walk through and sign off on. Most of it was routine. ER. ICU. Main lobby. Parking garage. But one line on the list always bothered me. Lower West Wing, service level. I asked the day supervisor about it during my first week. That area's mostly storage, he said. Old offices. Don't worry about it. That answer didn't match the tone he used. He said it like he was brushing dirt under a rug. The first few nights, nothing happened. The hospital at night has its own rhythm. Machines beeping softly. Occasional footsteps from nurses. Distant intercom announcements echoing through empty halls. But when I started doing the lower West Wing patrols, the atmosphere changed. The elevator to that level didn't have a button. You had to use a keycard and type a code. When the doors opened, the air felt colder. Not dramatically, just enough that you noticed it every time. The lights flickered slightly, even though the rest of the hospital never did. The cameras down there were old. Black and white feeds. Lower frame rate. Occasional static. The first strange thing happened on my 6th night. I was halfway through the patrol when I heard a door close behind me. Not a slam. A careful click. I turned around. The corridor was empty. I checked the nearest door. Locked. All of them were. I told myself it was pressure changes, HVAC systems, anything but what it felt like. The second thing happened 2 nights later. I was back at the desk when I noticed movement on one of the lower West Wing cameras. Camera LWR3. It showed a hallway I'd just walked through minutes earlier. The movement wasn't fast. It was subtle. A shadow sliding across the far wall. I zoomed in. Nothing. Then the shadow appeared again. Longer this time. Like something tall passing just out of frame. I radioed the nurse station. Anyone down in lower West Wing? There was a pause. Then, no. That area's closed. I didn't like the way she said closed. On my next patrol, I paid closer attention. That's when I noticed the doors. Some of them had old room number plaques still attached. Numbers that didn't match the current hospital layout. I checked the map on my phone. Lower West Wing didn't exist. Not officially. The map jumped from basement level to sub-basement. No service level. I asked another guard about it during shift change. He stared at me for a moment. You doing that patrol? He asked. Yeah. He shook his head. I don't. I laughed, assuming he was joking. He didn't laugh back. Ask the older staff, he said. They'll tell you. The older staff didn't want to talk. One nurse crossed herself when I mentioned it. Another told me, flatly, don't wander. That night, things escalated. I was watching the cameras around 3 a.m. when every lower West Wing feed froze at once. No error message. Just frozen images. I stood up, grabbed my flashlight. I don't know why I went down there. Maybe curiosity. Maybe pride. Maybe the feeling that something would happen whether I was there or not. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, the lights were off. All of them. Emergency lighting kicked on after a few seconds, bathing the corridor in dim red glow. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Bare feet. Slow. Dragging slightly. Coming from deeper in the wing. Security, I called out. My voice sounded wrong down there. Like it didn't belong. The footsteps stopped. Then resumed. Closer. I backed up. My radio crackled. Then a voice came through. Not dispatch. Not anyone I recognized. Just breathing. Heavy. Wet. I ran. I didn't look back. When I reached the elevator, the doors wouldn't close. Something blocked them. Not physically. Just refused. The footsteps were right behind me now. I could feel the air move. I mashed the button again and again. The doors finally shut. Back at the desk, all the cameras were working. Every feed normal. I checked the logs. No record of the outage. No record of movement. I quit the next morning. No notice. A month later, I ran into a former hospital employee at a bar. We got to talking. I mentioned the lower west wing. His face changed immediately. That's not a service level, he said quietly. What is it? He hesitated. Used to be a long-term care ward, he said. Decades ago. Before regulations changed. What happened to it? He took a drink. Patients kept dying at night. Staff complained about being watched. About hearing footsteps after rounds. I asked why it was still on patrol routes. He looked at me. So someone notices if it starts walking again. I never went back. But sometimes, when I pass that hospital late at night, I swear I see lights on in a wing that shouldn't exist. I was hired to guard a mall that had been closed for almost 2 years. No stores. No customers. No reason for anyone to be there. That's what made it an easy assignment. The mall was waiting to be demolished, but until permits cleared, the property owners needed overnight security to prevent vandalism and squatting. My shift ran from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. I worked alone. The place was massive. 3 floors. Multiple wings. A central atrium with a skylight that let moonlight spill across the tiled floor at night. During the day, it probably looked sad. At night, it felt wrong. The building still had power, but most lights were off to save electricity. Only emergency lighting remained, dim, uneven, and unreliable. My routine was simple. Sit at the security desk. Watch the cameras. Do patrols every 90 minutes. The first week was quiet. Too quiet. The mall had a sound you couldn't escape, a low hum from old ventilation systems and distant creaks as the structure shifted with temperature changes. I started recognizing which noises were normal. That's how I knew something was off when I heard footsteps. Not echoes. Not settling. Footsteps. They came from the upper level. I froze behind the desk, listening. Slow. Uneven. Like someone walking without shoes. I checked the cameras. Upper level, east wing. Empty. Every angle. No motion alerts. I radioed in anyway, knowing no one would answer. Security checking possible movement. Only static replied. I told myself it was nothing. The next night, the motion sensors triggered. Zone E12. That zone covered an old clothing store near the food court. I pulled up the camera. Nothing. But the sensor log showed sustained movement, not a blip. Continuous motion for almost 30 seconds. I grabbed my flashlight and went to check. The store gate was half open. It hadn't been like that before. I was certain of it. Inside, the store was empty except for discarded mannequins stacked against the wall. Their glossy faces reflected my flashlight beam in a way that made my stomach twist. I checked the back exit. Locked. No signs of forced entry. When I returned to the desk, I noticed something unsettling. The motion alerts matched my patrol schedule. Almost exactly. Every alert happened shortly before I would normally reach that area. Like something was moving, then stopping. Waiting. The third week was when I realized it wasn't random. The alert started shifting. Adapting. If I delayed a patrol, the movement delayed too. If I sped up, the sensors triggered earlier. Whatever was in the mall wasn't just wandering. It was watching. Learning. One night around 2 a.m., I decided to change my route entirely. Instead of starting with the ground floor, I went straight to the top level. The mall felt different up there. Colder. The air smelled stale, like dust and old fabric. I walked past shuttered storefronts until I reached the skylight overlooking the atrium. That's when I saw the footprints. Bare footprints. Dusty. Fresh. They led from the escalator and stopped right in the middle of the floor. No return trail. Just ended. My radio crackled. I nearly dropped it. Then I heard breathing. Not through the radio. Above me. I shined my flashlight upward. The ceiling panels were intact. But one of them was slightly displaced. As if something had been pushed up into the crawl space. I backed away slowly. The breathing stopped. Then the footsteps started again. This time, they weren't hiding. They followed me. Not fast. Not chasing. Keeping pace. Always behind me. I reached the stairwell and ran. When I got back to the security desk, every camera was active. All showing empty corridors. Except one. The atrium camera. Something was standing just out of frame. I could see its shadow stretching across the tiles. Too tall. Too thin. The shadow moved when I moved. Mirroring me. I shut off the monitor. That night, I didn't do another patrol. At 4:50 a.m., 5 minutes before shift change, the motion sensors went off everywhere at once. Every zone. Every floor. Continuous movement. Like something was running. Circling. The front doors rattled. From the inside. When morning security arrived, they found me sitting at the desk with all the lights on. They asked what happened. I told them everything. They exchanged looks. One of them finally spoke. You saw it too. They admitted something. The mall wasn't empty. Not really. They'd had guards quit without notice. Others refused to patrol certain wings. One claimed something followed him home. The building had been sealed multiple times. Whatever was inside always found new ways to move. The owners knew. That's why the job paid so well. I quit that morning. The mall was demolished 6 months later. During demolition, workers reported movement inside after hours. Cameras were installed. They caught nothing. But one worker refused to return after finding footprints in the dust, barefoot, on a floor that hadn't been poured yet. Sometimes I drive past the empty lot where the mall once stood. There's nothing there now. Just flat concrete. But late at night, I swear I see motion. Like something still walking the routes it learned. I took the night security job because I thought it would be easy. Sit in a booth. Watch cameras. Do patrols every hour. Get paid. That's what the supervisor told me during orientation. What he didn't tell me was how quiet the nights really were, or how silence can start to feel like pressure when you're alone with it long enough. The site was a distribution warehouse on the outskirts of town. Massive building. High ceilings. Long corridors that echoed even when you walked normally. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I worked alone. The first week was uneventful. Boring, even. I spent most of the night watching camera feeds, scrolling my phone, walking the same routes over and over. Then, on the 9th night, something small happened. Something I ignored. I was doing a routine patrol when I heard a sound near the loading docks. Not loud. Not sudden. Just a metallic clink. Like something gently bumping into steel. I stopped walking. Listened. Nothing. I told myself it was the building settling and kept moving. When I got back to the security room, I checked the cameras covering the docks. All empty. No movement logs. No motion alerts. That bothered me more than if I'd seen something. A few nights later, it happened again. This time, I was watching the monitors when I noticed camera 14 flicker. Just for a split second. Static. Then normal. Camera 14 covered the far end of the warehouse, a section that hadn't been used in years. I zoomed in. The aisle was empty. But something about it felt off. The pallets were stacked differently than I remembered. I pulled up older footage to compare. They hadn't changed. But my stomach told me they had. That's when I started paying attention. Every night after that, something felt slightly wrong. A door I was sure I'd locked would be unlocked during patrol. A light I turned off would be on an hour later. A camera would flicker, always the same few. I reported it to my supervisor. He shrugged it off. Old building, he said. Sensors glitch. Cameras act up. You'll get used to it. I didn't. On the 15th night, I heard footsteps. Not echoes of my own. Not pipes. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. They came from the unused section. I stood still, heart pounding, radio in hand. Hello? I called out, immediately feeling stupid. The footsteps stopped. I waited. Nothing. I returned to the security room and pulled up the cameras. Camera 14. The aisle was empty. But the timestamp showed something strange. There was a 3-minute gap in the recording. No error message. No power outage. Just missing time. I rewound further. More gaps. Always late at night. Always in the same area. I checked the other cameras. Only camera 14. That night, I didn't leave the booth again. The next shift, I came prepared. I brought a flashlight, a spare battery, and my phone fully charged. Around 2:30 a.m., camera 14 flickered again. This time, it didn't come back immediately. The screen stayed black for a full 5 seconds. When the feed returned, something was different. There was an object in the aisle. I leaned closer. It looked like a chair. A metal folding chair. I was sure it hadn't been there before. No one had authorization to be in that area. I checked the logs. No access entries. No alarms. Just a chair. I grabbed my flashlight and radio and headed out. The walk to that section felt longer than usual. Every step echoed too loudly. When I reached the aisle, the chair was gone. The floor, however, wasn't clean. There were scuff marks. Circular ones. Like something heavy had been dragged and repositioned multiple times. My radio crackled. Static. Then a sound that made my blood run cold. Breathing. Not mine. Not over the radio. Behind me. I spun around. Nothing. I ran back to the security room and locked the door. I didn't tell my supervisor everything. I knew how it would sound. Instead, I asked if anyone else had reported issues with camera 14. He paused. Then said, "You shouldn't worry about that camera." That was his exact wording. I asked why. He sighed. Because everyone who focuses on it ends up quitting. That night, I stayed until morning. The next night, I didn't. I quit without notice. 2 weeks later, I ran into another former guard at a gas station. He recognized the logo on my jacket. "Warehouse job?" he asked. I nodded. He looked at me for a long moment. "Did you ever hear it breathing?" I didn't answer. He didn't need me to.